Even more grammar. Okay. So we have some more emails today, and I've got some emails to catch up from previously on the Fallible Ideas list regarding grammar. So let's see what we have. So I had written my theory about some cases of postpositive adjectives. Postpositive means it comes after the noun, because normally an adjective appears before the noun, right? Red Bull, cheesy pizza. Also but red and cheesy are more clearly adjectives. Anyway, so right, so my grand unifying theory was that postpositive adjectives, at least some cases of them, are basically, because there's some that are like, well, anyway, at least some cases of postpositive adjectives are substitutes for not writing out a relative clause. And the example I had was, if you have something like, the senators present voted on the bill, which I think sounds fine, then you could say, also the senators who were present voted on the bill, right? And so this adjective, so this is the relative clause, and what's the adjective actually modifying, though? It's modifying who, because it's linked. This is subject, who, verb were, which is a linking verb, and then present is an adjective, right? So that's the relationship. So this is, in this rendition, the senators isn't being modified by present, it's being modified by this whole thing. And this adjective appears after senators because that's what this like sentence structure is like, or this clause structure is, where you have the subject, the linking verb, and then the adjective or noun that renames the linking verb. So that's why it's after, because when we drop this and we go back to this, well, we are leaving the interesting part of this relative clause. Interesting in the sense that it's telling us the most information. If you just had the senators who were, you'd be like, wow, that's very useful. But if you know that they were present, then that's giving you more information. It's saying, well, the senators who were there in the building where they're doing the voting or whatever, right? So, and you still get that information if you drop the who were, which is why it's okay to do that. Like, that's why, like, the ability to drop this and just give it as this is related. It's like an information preservation thing. It's like, okay, well, we want to say this whole thing faster. How do we do that while not dropping the important information? And so you keep the adjective. And so then when you look at it, you're like, well, okay, I get the idea of this senator's present, but why the heck is this thing after? And so then you got to go back and think about it. That was my theory that I laid out. Now, Kate liked it, and then discussed whether we needed like the postpositive adjective terminology, and I was just using that. I said in a previous email because I saw it online. I was like, okay, well, I'll roll with that. But yeah, I would just say when adjectives come after the noun or something. Like post-positive adjective is it's a bit faster than saying adjective after the noun, but like it's like you don't want to multiply terminology beyond necessity, and like the post-positive stuff, you have to think about how to decompress, like, because it's like post-positive adjective. It's like, okay, well, you could figure out what adjective means pretty fast. Then you gotta be like post-positive. Oh, they're talking about position, and post means after. So then, it's this mental process. You don't have to do that each time, but it's worth it to use an extra word or two, and then not have to have somebody like unzip your strange term into their brain. I think so. So here's the thing. So reading Kate's email, she's replying to Anne about this terminological thing, and Kate says the word, meaning the present and the senator's present, she says the word is certainly functioning as an adjective. And yes, but it's so under the theory that I've laid out, in its original situation, the word is functioning as an adjective within a relative clause, but so I guess this is the issue I've been struggling with somewhat, is if you drop that relative clause, the rest of it, and you just have present, so then do you say that present is modifying senators? Because I guess the relative clause itself is modifying senators, but present wasn't. But present is standing for the relative clause. So do you impute the relationship of the thing that the individual word is standing for to just the word and the word that's being modified when you drop the rest of the clause? Because remember, under my theory, I should just paste this so I have it up. Under my theory, present is modifying who, and so if we drop that, so we go up to this one, then it's does the dropping this stuff permit us to then point the modification arrow, because maybe I should diagram this. Right, but just looking at it how it is here, if we want to analyze this sentence, the senators present voted on the bill, should we say it's really this sentence and analyze that, or can we just say senators is being modified by present, because present is standing for a relative clause, which is modifying senators, and it's like the only surviving word of that clause, so to speak. So it's going to stand in the same relation to senators that the clause that it's standing for stood in relation to senators. I think that makes sense. So anyway, bringing it back to the current conversation, Anne had asked if we should just call the adjectives when they appear after the noun adjectives. And Kate said that the word's functioning as an adjective. So she thinks calling it an adjective is fine, like the word meaning like present. She says, however, I still think it's useful to think of there being a partially omitted relative clause in there. One reason is that it highlights a connection between post-positive adjectives and relative clauses. This helps you better unify and organize your knowledge of ways to pull off the adjective functionality. I'm not sure why this is in quotes. Another reason is that it's easier to figure out what's going on if you don't already know. One thing that I think, just as a side comment, because we have maybe a partial explanation of what's going on with these post-positive adjectives, but it's not, I think there's more to it, because so Anne had said earlier, she had pointed out that, where is it? I guess it's this one. Right. The red ball, the ball that is red, right, you can rewrite lots of adjectives to come in a relative clause after the noun. But what I think is interesting, so with the senators present voted on the bill, I think the relationship between this, what I'm calling this implied relative clause and the adjective is clarifying, and it also, everything kind of stays in the same place, you just get stuff dropped. You could also put present before, the present senators. So it's not the case that, present can kind of float around, and we could say, well, if it's before, let me start doing this out. This is not how I would write it, but I think it's fine. I think it's sensible. I think it's reasonably grammatical sounding English. I'll drop the quotes here. I just like consistency. Okay. Now, okay, so maybe now we're starting to get somewhere. So it seems like there's a few cases. There's cases where There are cases where the adjective has to come before the noun unless it's in, well, right, where an adjective has to come before a noun unless it's in an explicit relative clause after the noun, in which case it's not even really, because the clause is explicit, it's not even really modifying the noun anymore. It's part of a clause which is, but it's not really modifying directly. It's the clause that's modifying directly. So for example, alright, so I wrote some stuff. So what I say is, there's a few different cases. The default is that adjectives must come before the nouns, or just nouns, if they are to modify that noun from within the subject of the sentence. Meaning, well, I say, lots of adjectives can modify subjects from the predicate if they're connected by a linking verb, but that's beyond the scope of what I'm talking about here. So, these are examples of the standard thing. The red ball is pretty, the cheesy pizza was hot, and so red is modifying ball, and it comes before. And I also put a note, you can rewrite the sentences above to put the adjective in a clause that comes after the noun, but it needs to be an explicit relative clause, meaning that the adjective can never modify the noun directly when it comes after the noun, but is still in the subject part of the sentence. So I'm just being very explicit here about excluding the linking verb case. So I give an example. The ball that is red is pretty. Red is modifying that, not ball directly. Only that is red as a whole, meaning the whole expression, modifies ball. You wouldn't say, the ball red is pretty. You can't do that. So these cases, sort of the straightforward, simple cases, the adjective has to be before. If it's after, it's either part of a linking verb or it's being connected with a linking verb, or it's part of a relative clause. But those are different. Now, there are cases where adjectives can only come after the noun they modify. And so one case I found is when an adjective modifies a pronoun. I should say. And I say, these cases include when an adjective modifies a pronoun, and in certain expressions related to titles, food, and various other examples. So, when an adjective modifies a pronoun. Example, everyone present voted for the bill. You would not say, present everyone voted for the bill. And I say, no, you can think of the adjective here as being part of an implied relative clause. Example, everyone who was present voted for the bill. And so then the other examples is certain things related to titles, law, military, feudal stuff, names, of food and families. So, Attorney General, Court Martial, Heir Apparent, Knight Errant, the Brothers Grimm, Professor Emeritus, Beef Wellington, Eggs Benedict. You get the idea. Now, there's a third case. I'm going to number these. Adjective placement optional. There are cases when the adjective can appear either before or after the noun being modified. If the adjective appears before, it's a standard modifier. If it appears after, my theory is that my theory is that it is part of an omitted relative clause. Examples. So before the noun, the present senators voted on the bill. After the noun, the senators present voted on the bill. And this just means this is like the implied part. So I just edited this. I wanted to make sure that it was really clear what the actual sentence was versus what the implied. Oh, I should make it even clearer. Okay. Right. So yeah, I just wanted to move the part where I bring up the implication, the implied relative clause, into a parenthetical, and just have the actual part itself. So I think this makes sense as a basic framework for how. Alright, so I sent out my email about adjective placement, so let's see what else there is to comment on. Just says, and so it just is analyzing John gets sweaty when he does his exercise routine. So my reading is right, so I think this gets seems like a linking verb to me because it's relating John and sweaty. When he does his exercise routine. So under the FI grammar approach, maybe I shouldn't call it that. I don't know that grammar is part of FI, or like particular interpretations of grammar are part of FI. Although it is on the FI website, so maybe that's what, I don't know. Under Eliot's approach to grammar, he does his exercise routine is, we look at it as a clause which is being connected by when. So this is a conjunction, and then he does something. What does he do? His exercise routine. So his exercise routine is an object, and the real core object is routine, and then his is an adjective, possessive adjective if you want to call it that, as is an exercise is also an adjective, and they're both modifying routine. So let's see what Gist says. There are two clauses joined by the subordinating conjunction when. Yes. The first clause is the main clause. The second clause is the subordinate clause. All good so far. The structure of the sentence is clause 1, when, clause 2. Clause 1, John gets sweaty. Verb gets. Subject John. Object sweaty. Ah, I see. So I disagree. Both because, I mean, gets means becomes. Becomes is intransitive. Oh, except with the special expression talking about clothing. Right, it is becoming clear. So then gets. I started out with the becomes because that's what I'm sort of translating it into. Right, okay. So American Heritage Dictionary is 4th edition. Get, verb intransitive, to become, right? So that's where it started. Example, eventually got well. Like, it could be he eventually got well. So it'd be he got well. What did it become? Well, as in not sick. So this is an intransitive verb, so it cannot have an object. The sentence is about John and what happens to him when he does his exercise routine. What happens to him as he gets sweaty. That seems fine. The misidentification of the verb is the only issue that I saw with GIST's analysis. Like the nature of the verb. And it's not, like, he managed to extract the correct meaning, so it's not hugely important, but I am going to point it out. Because people post on the list for criticism, so. Now, I'm reading this again, and I see that just says his is an adjective modifying routine. It says which routine? No. It says whose routine? His says whose routine? Exercise is an adjective modifying routine and says what kind of routine. That's fine. Okay. So it just says, I did the above analysis without doing research. Then I decided to check whether exercise can be an adjective. Merriam-Webster says that it can be a noun or a verb. It being an adjective was not listed. I checked 2 other... Wait. Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay. Right, so I see the issue that he's having, but the thing is that nouns can be used as adjectives, essentially. I think Eliot might talk about this somewhere, even, where he talks about, like, metal. Metal used to just be like metal, but now you can talk about metal glasses, you know, or something like that, or like wood just used to refer to like the wood, but now we talk about a wood table. I used to get something called ziti pizza, and yeah, they would put ziti on top of pizza, but ziti is a noun. It's a type of pasta, but in that context it becomes an adjective. So yeah, I see the concern, and that's a case where I do think, like, let me check my dictionaries. Let me check all of them. Okay. Noun. Sizable. Yeah. Okay. So none of the, well, maybe just edge. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's, I see the issue. Yeah, you could also look at it as like a compound noun. Like both, I think both ways are valid. Like you could look at wood table as like talking about the wood table noun concept, or table modified by wood. You could talk about metal glasses as, you know, a noun. Metal glasses like a compound noun, or glasses modified by metal. You talk about ziti pizza as like, you know, compound noun, or pizza modified by ziti. So if I think those are both okay. So I just made my point about metal glasses, wood table, ziti pizza. You can have multiple perspectives on that, and that's fine. I also say lots of sentences involve nouns getting more than one modifier, because just says that he thinks my modifying exercise routine makes more sense than my an exercise modifying routine. And I don't think it necessarily makes more sense. Like, there's lots of sentences. He was a big, strong man. She was driving a fast, shiny car. You know. It's like, he was a big man. He was a strong man. Both of these are modifying man, big and strong, fast and shiny. They stand alone. And you don't need to say he was a big, strong man. Strong man is a word, right? But that's a different thing. So, you know, I think these are clear where it's like two adjectives modifying a noun. Okay. I'm just letting just know that this is going to be on my video. By the way, I'm liking American Heritage 4th edition. It seems pretty good. Okay, I'm going to send this. Gonna end the video here.